Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor in front of his guitar and one of his dogs. Now today I'm going to be reviewing an album by Brent Cobb, C-O-B-B, called Keep Them On They Toes. And I have a little bit of a problem, and it's a little bit of an unconventional problem, but comfortable music makes me uncomfortable. It puts me out of my comfort zone, especially as a reviewer. Now, I often get comments, and I really appreciate them, on videos like the one for Scarlord or 100 gecs or even Charlie XCX, or anytime I review something that's either like really avant-garde and disturbing, like 100 gecs, or something that's super duper poppy and maybe seen by prestigious snobs like myself as below them. Whenever I kind of get out of what would be perceived to be my comfort zone, I get a lot of credit, and people say, I'm glad that some old dude like you can really approach this kind of challenging music and treat it seriously. But I have to be honest, it's much harder for me to review an album like Keep Them On They Toes by Brent Cobb, an album which is completely inoffensive by all measures. Solidly written, well sung, well played guitars, good lyrics, meaningful, warm, comforting. It is a completely comfortable album. And that puts me off because I don't know what I can do with it. I don't know what I can say about it. It doesn't make me feel younger. It doesn't make me feel cooler. It doesn't make me excited. It doesn't make me feel anything other than, what am I going to say about this? Apparently Bo doesn't care because he's snoring loud enough. It's actually on the video. Bo, buddy, are you awake and you're snoring? His eyes are open and he's snoring. But what I want to say about this music is, I sort of have this new category that sort of goes in my head as kind of older brother rock. So music that isn't necessarily for old people, but maybe your older brothers. And that sounds kind of insulting, but I want to explain it a little bit further. Now, first of all, I am the youngest of 4. I have 3 older brothers, and that is part of the reason why I'm a music critic, or why I pretend to be a music critic on YouTube. Part of the reason that I love music and that I love so many different kinds of music is because when you are the 4th brother, you are receiving all of this information. You end up being like the apex predator who just gets all of the protein and nutrients from all those other things that those who came before you have consumed. So my oldest brother, Ward, was like my classic rock guru, and he also taught me how to play guitar, drums, and bass. And then the brother closest to me, Amos, got me into rap music and got me into techno. So I sort of had these 2 poles. But then in the middle there was my brother, Bart. And he's a lot harder to place. I mean, he sort of taught me how to be cool, because he was a super cool guy. When I was younger and he was a teenager, he was 11 years older than me. I remember he picked up my cello and he played Satisfaction by the Stones on the cello. And I was like, how does he know? How could he do that? I still, to this day, have never been more impressed by a musician doing anything. I remember getting into his Saab 900 once, and he was playing No Woman, No Cry by Bob Marley, and I'd never heard any reggae. I was probably 8 years old or something, and I heard it, and I just thought, this is the coolest. No Woman, No Cry. I don't know what that means, but this is awesome. He eventually got super into the Grateful Dead, and I had my Grateful Dead phase. And most interestingly, in the 90s, he was the person who accidentally introduced me to alternative rock and roll. He played Jane Says by Jane's Addiction, and I got really into it. And then he completely abandoned the genre as far as I know, and I sort of went off and got into punk and all that kind of stuff, and alternative and grunge, and he just kind of went on his own way. And I've had a hard time placing his music for a long time. So, go backwards, fast forward to Taco Tuesday. My family gets together on Zoom every Taco Tuesday, and we eat tacos and we talk to each other. And I noticed that he's wearing this t-shirt, and it's of a radio station, so just for fun, I'm waiting for everyone else. We get on first, and everyone else comes on later. I'm like, hey, what's on there? And it's for a radio channel called WDVX 89.9 in Knoxville, Tennessee, where his family's from, or where his wife's family's from, and where he visits a lot. And he just starts going on and on about this radio station. This radio station is I mean, it's great. It sounds wonderful, but like he talks about it the way Christians talk about Jesus, like, and it's all like supported by listeners, but it's not PBS, and it's all Americana, and it comes from Knoxville, and it comes from the people, and there's no ads. There's no ads, and you can stream it and you can listen to it, and it's all Americana. And that's where I'm hearing this new album, Skye, that you got to check out by Brent Cobb. So okay. All right, fine. I have a kind of interesting relationship with Americana. I've reviewed Marcus King and Steve Earle on here, and Charlie Crockett, kind of artists who fit in there. And I've been working on a definition of what even is Americana as far as music goes. I believe my final definition is going to be music for blue voters in red states, or country music for people who don't like bad music. So like country music for people who really like the feeling and the spirit of country music but don't like what it's become. So even in there, there's a little bit of this kind of derisiveness in my tone, a little bit of snarky cynicism that's coming through, right? Like I'm kind of putting it down, and I don't really mean to. But what am I supposed to do with this music that's just so earnest and just so inoffensive? I wasn't even going to review the album. I listened to it and I liked it enough. But then on Taco Tuesday, my nephew, my 23-year-old nephew, I asked him, what are you listening to? And he's like, I'm listening to Brent Cobb. And he's got really good taste in music too. So between these two, that settled my fate, and I decided I would listen to it. And I like it enough to review it. It's probably the most likely thing to win a Grammy of anything I've ever reviewed on here. In some ways, Grammys are a little bit like Oscars, where you know whatever wins Grammys is going to be middle of the road, better than bad, but never great, right? So I imagine this will win the Grammy for Americana. It's a very, very solid album. But there's things to this album that I just hate. Like, I just hate them. But it's one of my theories, it's one of my philosophies, that whenever possible, you have to, if there's art and it's good, like you can recognize that it's generally good, but there's one element that sticks out and bothers you, try as an exercise to just accept that element and then move on. So if it's a singer's voice, accept that and move on. If it's lyrics, accept that and move on. If it's multiple things, if it's like, the whole thing doesn't come together, I'm not saying force yourself to listen to bad music, but with this album, it is the position that the singer takes. He comes on, he talks about how life is and how it ain't. And I say ain't on purpose because he uses a lot of kind of colloquial speech. He's like this older sage telling you about the follies of the world, and the world's gone crazy, but I'm just chilling by a stream watching the gators go by. And just this kind of like really weird, distant, I know everything. And this dude's like 9 years younger than me. I accept that and I move on. I accept that position, and then I just say, well, what's good? What's good is an amazingly solid songwriting. The thing about country music, the way it used to be and the way that it is now, is there is a similarity that often country music is based on an idea, like a single sentence, and then things branch from there. I think Willie Nelson and Hank Williams, but especially Willie Nelson, perfected this. Like, come up with a concept for a song, even just a line, and then everything will fall into place. If you're a good enough songwriter, you can write 3 verses and a chorus based on that one single idea. I think Chris Christopherson also does this as well. And in general, Brent Cobb does this extremely well all the way throughout the album. He writes everything. He co-writes some things with his wife, has a couple co-writers, but this is not some kind of, Nashville conglomerate putting music out. It's very personal, and the songwriting, like every song has like kind of a hook and a clear idea that follows through. I asked my brother Bart, I called him today, and I said, what is it that you like about it? And he said that it's smart but pedestrian, which I thought was cool. And that's true, right? Like it's a smart album, but it's also accessible, and it's not particularly pretentious, right? Sorry, I'm just moving my notes here. So, one good idea, everything goes from there. He has an amazing voice. If you like good voices on country singers, he has an amazing voice. It's that kind of voice where you're sort of like, he could be 20, he could be 70, you can't quite tell. Really good range. The question I have is his voice too affected? Apparently he's from Georgia, and I don't know, but at times it sounds like he is really trying to sound like someone from Georgia, maybe in an affected way. Like if I started talking to the Boston accent kid, right? Like, you'd be a little bit affected just because I'm from Boston. Doesn't mean I talk like that, but it's okay. All the way throughout, the musicianship is extremely solid. It's never really flashy, which I like. There's some good guitar solos, good textures of traditional instruments, banjos, pedal steels. But once I sort of got past the sort of weird, I don't know, pretension, or just the posturing, the sage posturing of the lyrics, I was really able to appreciate it a lot more. I read an interview with him where he described that the album is about thoughts and feelings. So I think that's pretty good. I think that's a good thing to say. And then what he says is that his last two albums were about growing up in Georgia, and now that he lives there again, he's not writing about missing it anymore. So this is interesting. I have no idea about his other albums. This is the first time I've ever listened to him, thanks to my nephew and my brother. But it's cool because he says, it's not about longing for home. It's what I think about now that I live here. So that's an interesting position, you know, an interesting thing where often artists go and they live in LA or Nashville or New York or whatever, or Brooklyn. Goddamn Brooklyn. They all move to these different places, and then it's interesting to have him come back and just sing about his life there. So let's get through it. Let's talk about the album track by track. In my pink Citroën, as I like to do, Bo appears to be, he is completely conked out. I mean, but he's so bright. He looks, is there a way for me to change I'm trying to change the lighting on the video so you can see him more. So he's not just a blinding dog of just beautiful, resplendent sleep. Okay. So let's go through the album. It starts off with the track "Keep 'Em on They Toes." Already with the title, we're going back to my initial problem of the whole song feels like it's maybe written to his child, like maybe he has like a newborn or something. It has that kind of feel, but it's sort of telling you about how to live. But it develops quite nicely. I like the way the drums come in. I like the way the organ comes in. It's a very good opening track, a good example of the kind of lyrics that he's writing, of this kind of position that he has. And then we get to the song "Shut Up and Sing." This is going to create some problems structurally for the rest of the album. Because the whole song is like, why won't they let me sing about politics? Okay, just remember that. Remember that this song is saying that everyone just wants me to shut up and sing. Has kind of a cool, almost line in the coconut guitar line going. Very cool wailing harmonica, which is the first hint on the album of Led Zeppelin. And towards the end of the album, I get a lot of Led Zeppelin feel. Not like he's trying to imitate Led Zeppelin, but kind of a similar way where sometimes Led Zeppelin has a sort of country folky feel. It feels in that kind of register. Cool kind of dynamics before this wailing harmonica bit where it gets a little bit quiet. In general, the album's pretty mid-range, mid-level excitement all the way through. This song actually gets like, and there's right before that, there's a little calm before that storm. Good Times and Good Love. Another great example of this style of songwriting where he writes about good times and good love don't last forever, and so that's why he should theoretically marry this woman. Apparently this song is written with Luke Bryan, who is one of those country singers who has a name, has two first names, and I don't know anything about him. I don't know. If you put a gun to my head and played me a song by Blake Shelton and a song by Luke Bryan, I would not know which one's which. I assume Luke Bryan is better because he's working with this guy, but I don't know. That's how unbelievably ignorant I am of country music, both the good kind and the kind that is more popular. There's a track, "Sometimes I'm a Clown," and this is cool because this appears to be written in the third person. And if I had to say my druthers, how I would like this album a lot more is if he wrote it in the third person. That would remove a little bit of this sort of sage posturing that he puts forth, because it's all about like someone who has a ton of kids and he's just like sometimes making mistakes, and it feels like it's that sort of third person perspective, which is often used quite well in country music and just in music in general. When you're trying to communicate a message, it's much better to say like, I met a man and he said keep them on their toes, as opposed to I tell you to keep them on their toes. But a really nice lyric there. We're too rich to be broke, but too poor to be covered. Almost a Neil Young style acoustic guitar too, and pedal steel and fiddle. Really, really quite nice. And then we get to my favorite track, "This Side of the River," which is my favorite track despite the fact I suspect it's the closest thing to filler on this album. But there's just something I really like about this. It's maybe because it's about nature It's about perspective, about being on one side of the river and not knowing what the other side looks like. Speaking of the Grateful Dead, it reminds me slightly of the song Ripple, which is not a song that I like very much by the Grateful Dead. But still, it's nice because this is a song about perspective and nature, but it doesn't feel preachy. And just a great drum line, just a very, very steady hi-hat. I'm going to play you some of this song leading into a wonderful guitar solo. So here's some This Side of the River by Brent Cobb with 2 B's. Of course it's 2 B's. Whose name is Brent? You know what the problem is? Is that you want to say Brett Cobb, but it's Brent Cobb with 2 B's.
But I've never seen this overflowing stream from the other side. Over there could be nice. I thought about it twice. The first time was on this stormy Monday. By Tuesday, the blues flooded through my mind. I knew where I'd reside.
So you hear that nice hi-hat. Here's a good guitar solo. Also on this track you have the voice with a harmony underneath. Throughout the album there's often a nice harmony made with another singer popping on. Just really solid. I really like this track. If the whole album was like this, I don't think I would have had any trouble with it at all. But this really is, I think, the best of it. But maybe it is just, it's the least kind of preachy. The next track, Dust Under My Rug, has kind of a Sesame Street theme melody. Dun, 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 dun. It's sort of intentionally a series of cliches, like Dust Under My Rug and Fit as a Fiddle. I don't know what it is, but it's upbeat and nice. There's a really cool way his voice lifts before the chorus, which is the highlight of the album in terms of the vocal performance. Really an awesome thing. This is just really awesome. It's a great example of vocal performance. But then right before the guitar solo, he says, guitar. That hurts. I just don't say guitar before guitar solo. It's just too affected. We know it's a guitar solo. But still, it's a good solo. And then we get to the big problem of the album, Soapbox. Now at a certain point, this album started off and it was all like, hey, this is all about what you should do in life. And then it was like, I'm not supposed to talk about my opinions. And then there's a song called Soapbox, this sort of oompa sounding song saying, I don't preach no tricks, I don't talk no politics. Well, which is it? Hot dog, your opinion is louder than mine. Beautifully sung, especially with a female singer, Nikki Lane, who's on here as well singing along. It's a beautiful sounding song. But well, what is it? One song is singers don't get to sing about what they think. And then the other song is, hey singers, stop singing about what you think. Which is it? And then later, 2 tracks later, there's a song called The World Is Ending. And he's all like, they say the world is ending again. Well, I'm just sitting thinking about women and I don't care about all this hubbub. And it's is this centrist dad music? Is this meant for old dudes who just think that everyone's crazy on both sides and I just watch the stream go by? Is that the point? Or is the point that you want to talk politics but they tell you to shut up and sing? I'm too upset about this. But still, right? Isn't that annoying to have a contradictory message in the same album? Or maybe I'm missing something. Maybe it's a cohesive message, but I don't hear it. I don't want songs about how people are wrong, that things are bad. Okay, but things are a little too bad to have songs about how people are talking about things being bad. That works. 2018, you want to give me a song like that? Okay. I get that. So perspective is good. Okay. In between those 2 tracks, there's a song called When You Go. Really nice banjo on there. This is sort of another one of these, I know everything about existence. You can't take your money with you when you die. But it's really nice. The atmosphere on the song is really nice. And this is another one that kind of is in that Led Zeppelin territory. It's really it's really a good track. That's probably my second favorite track on the album. Then The World Is Ending, which I've already mentioned, has the centrist dad position of they keep saying things are bad, but that's what they said before. So, but I've also been called a centrist dad by like viewers of this channel, by my friends. So, you know, maybe it's a little too close to some of the positions that I've held. This has a weird 70s light rock chorus. And I actually like this change. It's sort of a departure. The whole end of the album sort of goes in a different direction. Kind of closes the door and opens a window, if you know what I mean. Same thing with the last track, Little Stuff, which has kind of an unexpected chorus. But again, more thoughts about how to live, let the rain go, chase the rainbow. But as I summarize my thoughts on this album, I sort of think that it's nice to go back to my brother and him saying that what he likes about it is its sort of smart pedestrian nature, you know? And I think perhaps my problem is that I am coming from a position where it has to be either smarter or stupider in order for me to like it. It can just be pretty smart, and the things that he says are generally smart, are generally true. They're not particularly controversial, but they're said, they're plain spoken, and they're supported by really good songwriting and really good musicianship. Whew. Okay, there's my review. Another in the older brother rock category. I hope Bo's okay. I'll see if Bo. Are you gonna say goodbye to them, Bo? Bo, are you gonna say goodbye to them? Are you gonna keep them on their bows? There you go. All right. Well, for Bo and for my guitar, Leroy, there's the camera.